These have adjustable dampening. I believe there's like 14 settings. All right, how's it going, everybody? We're back down in the garage again. And today we're gonna do a little more work on the daily. Gonna put some new coilovers in it. When I got the Sentra, it already had these cheap max speeding rod coilovers on it. I've had a little bit of experience with them in the past. I put a set on the Jetta when I took the air ride out. So I kind of already knew what to expect with those once I got the car. And they fulfilled every idea I had of what they were gonna do. I already went ahead and got the driver side coilover out. Let's go ahead and compare the two. So you can see this is quite used and blown out, this one that was on that car over there. But I have had a brand new set of the max speeding rods right out of the box. And compared to the Rev 9, I will say from just what I've seen thus far, the build quality on the Rev 9 is a little bit better. Very, very similar, you know what I mean? Like they're both under $500 for a set of coilovers, under $400 technically for that matter for a set of coilovers, which is pretty unheard of. Pretty unheard of for like anything that's good as far as coilovers go. You're really looking at like $800 and up. So under $400, $400 to $500, you're not really going to get a heck of a, you know, you can't expect to get something that's amazing for that price. These have adjustable dampening. I believe there's like 14 settings on this. They do have a setting or a version with twice that many or more than twice that many settings on them. But they are adjustable dampening front and rear, which is quite nice. The max speeding rods, one thing I do like, they come with pillow ball top mounts on the bottom of the line version. These do not have the pillow ball top mounts unless it's tucked away in there somewhere and it's just insanely stiff and I can't move it, but I was really muscling on it and I did not get it to break free. But they do have the obvious bearing at the top there for when you're turning the fronts. I like how the bottom spring perch on these has that little support piece you can see on top there, whereas max speeding does not. It's just the two tabs coming off of there, really no other support other than that. The shock shaft itself on the Rev 9 is much smaller than the shock shaft on the max speeding. And I believe, yeah, you can see the spring size itself is much, much smaller on the Rev 9. This would be like a classic coilover spring size, where the max speeding rods uses kind of like an oversized spring, which I also have one here to kind of compare. So this would be one of the springs that came out of the rear max speeding rod coilovers. I had to actually put a different spring to get it to sit at the height that I wanted because of how tall these are. You can see these are about an inch and a half taller than kind of your average coilover spring would be. At about 8.5 inches tall. Whereas these springs are at about 7 inches tall. So like I said, about an inch and a half taller. Another thing I probably should have noted earlier, this is obviously going on my 2003 Sentra Spec V. These are listed as just being a universal for 2000 up to 2006 Nissan Sentra. They don't specify for a Spec V or for your normal base model Sentra. There is some slight modification that has to be done to use mainly, I believe, just the strut bar. You have to change out one of these studs on each one of the front coilovers. I'll show you that in just a moment here. But other than that, I believe it should be a bolt-on affair other than just those two studs you guys swap out. But here is the factory rear strut from the Spec V. And you can see this is as low as this will go, actually. I have this collar twisted all the way up. You can see this will not twist anymore. Twist back, there it is. So this is as low as it will go, but you can see it is considerably lower. So you should get a good, probably solid 2 inches, 2.5 maybe inches lower than your factory ride height. I'm not sure yet if that will be enough for me in the rear. It appears you'll have plenty in the front because you can adjust the shock down out of the bottom of the perch. So you can go as low as you want basically on those. But the rears, we'll see. You're kind of limited on the rear. I believe the next design they have, these being the Hyperstreet 1, they have a Hyperstreet 2, which I believe is a revised design, along with it being the more dampening settings, like I mentioned earlier. I believe that is a revised design, and in the pictures it looks like this perch is a little bit shorter. Looks like this is welded right up there, so you'll probably get another inch out of those ones. But I don't know, because I have these ones. One last thing I mentioned, you do have to modify them a little bit to fit in the Spec V. But if you're a little bit handy, which most of you know I am, it's no pain to do it. All you really need to do here is get yourself an extended stud. You can see one is longer. Ideally, when you pop this one out, you have to pop one of them out of the top of the top hat there. Pop that out. Ideally, you'd probably want to go to like a AutoZone or maybe even like a mom and pop garage or something like that does a lot of random stuff, and they might have something this, or maybe they'll look something up, just like a longer version. They could measure it for you or something like that, or just go to like Home Depot and look for yourself. What I ended up using was just like a regular like button head bolt here with, it has like the 4 sides. I filed all the corners down till it fit pretty snugly, and then just used the nut to kind of tighten it down and push this up in there. Should be good enough. Just once I get it tightened down and it starts to grab, it'll pull itself up the rest of the way, and it should be good. So that's, I believe, all you'll have to do to modify these to fit in the Spec V. Or I'll show you over here. This is the reason why you have to do that. The strut tower bar on these has like a bushing or a washer kind of like stepped up built into it. So you need the extended stud to clear that. Technically, if you wanted to just take the strut bar out, you could run them out of the box. Put them in your car out of the box without the strut bar. But I want to keep my strut bar, so I'm going to go ahead and make this little change. Plus, the max speeding rods that the previous owner put in there, he'd already did the same thing, so I already had the bolts. I just had to file them down to fit in here because the max speeding rods have an aluminum top hat, so he was able to just pull them up through the aluminum. These ones are a metal top hat, so I had to file it because it wouldn't pull through the metal. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and throw these in there, and we'll catch up if we run into any issues. Otherwise, probably see you guys once I have it on the ground. Okay, we're back. Day 2. Didn't get as much film as I wanted last night. These are weekdays right now. I got work in the morning. Probably not going to film as much tonight as I want to. Same thing, got work in the morning. But got the fronts in last night. I went ahead and gave an alignment at work today. Feels much better than the old coilover setup. I went ahead and bumped the spring preload up on both fronts, 2 turns on the preload part of it. Can't think of what you want to call it, but I went 2 full turns on this on both fronts because I felt like it was set a little bit loose. It was pretty easy to stiffen them up, so meaning there wasn't too much tension on the spring. So went ahead, stiffened that up a little bit. Gonna go ahead and throw in the rears now. Okay, got one of the rears out. This is where it gets good. Right off the bat, you can see I had to do some kind of ghetto stuff. This is one of the really stiff springs I had back in my Rusty car way back when it was really slammed. These are 700 pound per inch, which is about 12K or 12.5K spring. So I had that, which you could see I was not able to set really any preload to get it at the ride height I want. So that is about the height I need it to be at for the ride height I want in the rear. And you can see even with that, so it's hard to demonstrate because I have to hold the strut compressed on the left, but even with the way I have it, with no preload available on that spring, it's still, you can see about a 1/2 inch or so higher than the Rev 9 coilover on the right will go. So I'm actually gonna probably have to raise these ones up a little bit. I have these maxed out at the moment. I'll probably raise these up a little bit. I'll probably also go ahead and bump up the preload on these springs a little bit as well. And these are also adjustable dampening. So I'll be able to adjust the dampening on the rears as well as the fronts. So definitely liking these a lot more than the max beating rods. They are twice the price, but I feel like you're definitely getting more than twice the product for what you get. Also, one thing I just noticed out of the corner of my eye, totally forgot to mention, this is a big one. You have to heavily modify the lower portion on the max speeding rod because you can see it's like massive compared to the Rev 9. Now I haven't test fit this yet, but I'm pretty sure I will not have to modify this just looking at the size here. So these, you can see I have to shave down a bunch to fit into the rear axle beam, into the space for this. I think these will be good to go. Gonna go ahead, put the rear in, and then I'll catch back up once I see how that goes. Another thing I failed to mention is the max speeding rod coilovers are they have an aluminum like top hat thing up here, whereas these Rev 9s have a steel one, so technically these might weigh a little bit more, but the max speeding rods up here are a lot thicker, so you can barely get like 2-3 threads to grab on the nuts here, which is probably not very safe. These are about an 1/8 inch thinner, so you can actually get like a decent amount of threads to grab on both nuts up here, which is nice. Also, technically, I can't fully confirm because I've already modified this area a little bit to fit the old max beating rods ones, but these do not hit down there. You may, if you haven't modified this, you may have to file down this little area like I showed you on the other ones, but so far everything on my car fits. And then the last thing, I was talking, I'm going to adjust the preload. So you can see I put the little black dot there, so I know how many turns I'm doing, but you can see I have to put in very little effort to spin this, which means there wasn't very much preload, and I'm not sure if they've gone and tested and, you know what I mean, done the R&R or whatever, or the R&D rather, or whatever you call it. I don't know if they've put in the time to research how much preload you need for these cars or whatever for the weight on them, but I feel like it is a little bit soft, so I'm just doing a few turns on here. I think I'm just going to do 3 turns for now on each side and kind of leave it at that, see how it feels, and then adjust from there. I also set the dampening in the rear a little bit stiffer than I have it in the front. Not sure if that's going to be good for everybody, but just going over how I have the car set up. Quick update on the coilovers. I've had the fronts and rears in the car for a couple days now, and go over a few things. So the rears do need modification out of the box. You can see right there, it hits on the bracket where the lower part of the shock or strut, coilover, whatever, mounts. And I do already have my bracket shaved down a bit. So you will have to not only shave the bracket on the car, but you'll have to shave the bottom of the coilover. Kind of unfortunate. I think I said earlier in the video, it looks like the Hyperstreet 2s are a slightly revised design on the bottom perch there, and it's already like sliced or chamfered to clear. These, however, are not. So whichever side, it's the outer side, like the outer towards the brakes or whatever, whichever side that is, you will have to shave down. Aside from that, I personally think that the spring rate is way too soft in the rear. It's a 5K spring in the back, and an 8K spring in the front. I think the front is probably okay. I would probably prefer like a 10K in the front, but the rear definitely needs to be stiffer. I went ahead and ordered the set, because they sell springs with different spring rates like separately. I ordered a set of 8K springs for the rear to replace the 5K. I'm gonna see how that rides, and then I might have to go ahead and get some 10Ks for the front as well. But I don't have as many complaints with the front as I do the rear. The rear, I'm not really happy with. Definitely I'm happier, way happier than like the max speeding rod thing, like, you know, what we went over, but still it's not quite there yet. Not sure, can't say the same about the upgraded revised version, but for these, the Hyperstreet ones, they need some attention.